Canto 7, Chapter 5, text number 10. This is the teachers, Chanda and Amarka, speaking to Prahlad, intimidating him. Oh, best of your family, has this pollution of your intelligence been brought about by you or by the enemies? We are all your teachers, and we are very eager to hear about this. Please tell us the truth. Purport: Prahlad Maharaj's teachers were astonished that a small boy could speak such exalted Vaishnava philosophy. Therefore, they inquired about the Vaishnavas, who stealthily taught it to him in order that these Vaishnavas might be arrested and killed. In the presence of Prahlad's father, Hiranyakasipu, Prahlad replied, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose external energy has created the distinctions of my friend and my enemy by diluting the intelligence of men. Indeed, I am now actually experiencing this, although I have previously heard of it from authoritative sources." Purport: as stated in Bhagavad Gita 5.18, Vidya vinaya sampane brahmani gavihastani shuni chaiva sapake cha pandita samadarshanaha. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater outcast. Pandita, those who are actually learned, the equipoised, advanced devotees who have full knowledge of everything, do not see any living entity as an enemy or friend. Instead, with broader vision, they see that everyone is part of Krishna, as confirmed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Jivera Swarupahai Krishnara Nichadas. Every living entity, being part of the Supreme Lord, is meant to serve the Lord, just as every part of the body is meant to serve the whole body. Paragraph: as servants of the Supreme Lord, all living entities are one, comma. But a Vaishnav, because of his natural humility, addresses every other living entity as Prabhu. A Vaishnava sees other servants to be so advanced that he has much to learn from them. Thus, he accepts all other devotees of the Lord as Prabhus, masters. Although everyone is a servant of the Lord, one Vaishnava servant, because of humility, sees another servant as his master. Understanding of the master begins from understanding of the spiritual master. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan nagati gotopi. Translation: by the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. And another quote: Sakshatari tvena samasta shastri uktastata bhavyata eva sadbihi kintu prabhor ya priya eva tasya bande guru sri charanarvindam. Translation: the spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord, because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all the revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hari, or Krishna. The spiritual master, the servant of God, is engaged in the most confidential service of the Lord, namely, delivering all the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya, in which one thinks, this person is my enemy, and that one is my friend. Actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the friend of all living entities, and all living entities are eternally servants of the Supreme Lord. Oneness is possible through this understanding, not through artificially thinking that every one of us is God or equal to God. The true understanding is that God is the Supreme Master and that all of us are servants of the Supreme Lord and are therefore on the same platform. This had already been taught to Prahlad by his spiritual master Narada, but Prahlad was nonetheless surprised by how a bewildered soul thinks one person is enemy and another is friend. Paragraph. As long as one adheres to the philosophy of duality, thinking one person a friend and another an enemy, he should be understood to be in the clutches of Maya. The Mayavadi philosopher who thinks that all living entities are God and are therefore one is also mistaken. No one is equal to God. The servant cannot be equal to the master. According to the Vaishnava philosophy, the master is one, and the servants are also one, but the distinction between the master and the servant must continue, even in the liberated stage. In the conditioned stage, we think that some living beings are our friends, whereas others are enemies, and thus we are in duality. In the liberated stage, however, the conception is that God is the master, and that all living entities, being servants of God, are one. Well, here we're getting the Chinta Bheda Bheda Tattva nicely laid out. And it's being presented in contrast to the friend and enemy consciousness. The friend and enemy consciousness is, we discussed yesterday. It's on the material platform. It's on the bodily platform. And if one wants to become free from the misconception, material conception of friend and enemy, one has to leave the bodily conception and come to the spiritual conception. As long as one remains on the bodily conception, even notionally or theoretically or something, one can accept I'm spirit soul. However, if one is still invested in the bodily conception, although notionally I accept I'm spirit soul, then there's still going to be friend-enemy consciousness. Maybe reduced, maybe not the extreme of the darkness of ignorance, like animals or other lower forms of life, where it's simply survival and etc., etc., etc. The material energy is designed in such a way to capture the living entity and keep the living entity there. We hear about this in Chaitanya Charitamrita, these two features of Maya, that which throws the living entity into illusion and that which holds the living entity there. Prapekshatmika and Avaranatmika Shakti. There's two divisions of this Maya potency. And once in that covered condition, very difficult to get free from it. And as long as one is in that material conception, the Maya conception, there's friend-enemy conception. It's the domino effect of the material conception or bodily conception of life. And human society is meant for elevation of consciousness. The potential is there, at least, to go beyond the friend-enemy conception. And there's the Sambandha Gyan, there's the teaching that explains the relationship between one living entity and another living entity and the supreme living entity, etc. And the living entity and matter, we talked about this yesterday. the distinctions between them. This is Madhvacharya's teaching, that the Veda aspect of the various energies of the Supreme Lord and how they relate with one another. And so there's a philosophy that supports a life that's free from duality, and one who has the spiritual conception can see both. What's that? One can see the distinctions of material variety, and one can also see the spiritual oneness. And this term that's being used here, the oneness term, we should be careful. Living entities are one, and then the supreme living entity is another one. We've heard this before, so just go through it. Nityo, Nityanam, Chaitanas, Chaitananam, Bahunam, Yovidadati Kaman. So the living entities are plural, Nityanam, and yet here we're hearing they're one. So that oneness is not a homogeneous oneness, it's a oneness of status, of being parts of the Supreme. I mean, the classic example that Prabhupada gives about the part of the whole is a bodily part. You know, he would use a finger or a hand is part of the body. The body is the whole. The finger or the hand is part of the body. And the finger or the hand is meant to serve the whole. And so the hand doesn't try to enjoy foodstuff separately, but gives the food to the mouth, goes to the stomach, goes to the body. So there's this function of the part to the whole. And the whole is the Supreme, and the parts, plural, are one. In the sense, in a qualified sense, in the sense that they're meant for serving the whole. So whether it's this part or that part or the other part, they're meant for serving the whole. And it takes cooperation when we have individuality. It takes cooperation to serve the whole in a productive and wholesome and positive manner. I'll just step back a little bit. We'll come back to this point, but step back to the process of creation. Because what happens in the very beginning is what happens at the present and what happens at the end. At the very beginning of creation, in the process of creation, without going through each of the steps, when things get to the point where there's the 24 elements arranged by in the sequence of the process of creation, there's the 24 elements, Mahatattva. There's the elements out there. And from the body of Mahavishnu comes seeds, golden seeds of the universes. They're spiritual. And as they exit the pores of his body and contact the 24 elements, 5 of those 24 elements, according to the process of creation, they cling to, or adhere to, or Bhaktisiddhanta's language is conglomerate. And in this way, the universe expands, but it's not functioning properly yet. There's elements, and then there's devas who are controllers. These are, before there's creation, these are prototype devas. It's a little technical, but I'll get back to the point that's here in this verse. And the devas have a transcendental service to do to help the Supreme Lord build the universe. And Brahma isn't there yet. The physically embodied Brahma is not there. Vishnu has not yet entered each universe, just in going in chronological sequence. The universes have, upon the exhalation of Mahavishnu, they've gone out and they contact the elements, and 5 elements conglomerate or congeal or cling to those spiritual seeds of universes. And there's devas who want to help the Supreme Lord, the prototype devas, to make things happen, but they can't make things happen. The elements are not cooperating. They can't do their service. They're invested with power to do some service, but they can't without the cooperative force. The cooperative force, they pray to Vishnu, and Vishnu enters within every atom of existence as Hiranyakasipu Vishnu. And within the heart of every living entity. So there goes in that sequence of creation. Then the demigods can start to do, because there's the direction, the intelligence. That's the singular one amongst the plural many. Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam. Now, materialists, neither do they recognize their souls, nor do they recognize their supreme soul. There are those that are monists that only recognize there's Brahman, not individual souls either. All there is Brahman. And there's no Para-Brahman. There's no Hiranyakasipu Vishnu or Mahavishnu or Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. There's all there is Brahman. So the undifferentiated Brahman doesn't explain the process of creation because it's there in the Vedas. In Rig Veda, the Purusha Sukta mantras, it's Sahasra Shirsha Purusha, Sahasraksha, Sahasrapat, etc. So the many, the living entities that are many, they're in a category of one. That is, they're the servant. That's the oneness of living entities amongst their diversity. And then there's the one, that's the master, always the master. And when there's a disconnect of consciousness, when one is covered by Maya from the sense of, I'm meant for the service of the Supreme, then one sees in duality. That's the covering of Maya, the product of Maya. Duality. Such as, there's many, but such as friend and enemy. It's a core material force. Animals have it, birds have it, fish have it, all living entities have it, humans have it, embodied creatures have it, that are in material conception of life. And one's covered by that material conception of life. It's not easy to get released from that material conception of life. The systems of yoga are meant to clear the covering and elevate consciousness, but it's not complete without devotion to the Supreme, without that position of service to the Supreme, loving service to the Supreme. That's the topmost yoga. That's Bhagavad Gita chapter 6. The topmost yoga is making that yoga or that connection with the Supreme where the mind goes to the Supreme and the senses directed by spiritual intelligence go to serving the master of the senses. That's the covering. When the covering is properly utilized, then purification of consciousness, elevation and purification of consciousness is attained, and then one can see things as they are. Conversely, if one doesn't come to that point, one will not see things as they are. One will see in duality, influenced by Maya, and a big feature of Maya, amongst many, is friend-enemy. And that's what Prahlad is speaking to his teachers. Circle back. They want to know who polluted your intelligence. Tell us the truth. We're your teachers. Don't lie. Tell us the truth. And the purport Prabhupada is saying, they want to identify who that person is, arrest him, kill him, and before Hiranyakasipu. Although they're Brahmins, they're subordinate to Brahmins. These two, Shanda and Amarka, are subordinate to the wicked Hiranyakasipu. They want to see Hiranyakasipu be satisfied by killing an enemy. They're in friend-enemy consciousness. They're not Brahmanas. They're in the status of, by Shukra, by seminal birth, but they're not qualified. And they're teaching and taking the position of a teacher when they're not qualified. So that's what Prahlad is saying. Well, you're not teachers. You're not qualified. You're covered by friend-enemy consciousness. You're covered by Maya consciousness. So he's not being disrespectful. He's just being very direct, innocent and very direct. And, there's consequences when you're innocent and very direct. Like, they want to smash him. Or the king, his father, wants to smash him. But the first attempt it goes back to from the previous section, where Hiranyakashipu wanted his son to become a nice asura, so he put them in the care of Shanda and Amarka, and then he sat him on his lap, and what's the best thing you learned? And he gave an answer that was infuriated Hiranyakashipu. Become and dedicate yourself to service of Hari. Give up this material way of life and dedicate yourself to the service. Go to the forest and dedicate yourself to the service of Hari. Immediately, the friend-enemy consciousness is someone has polluted him. So Shanda and Amarka, watch vigilantly, make sure he doesn't get further polluted. He hasn't yet said, correct him. Just make sure he doesn't get further polluted. So now they're wanting to know, who polluted you? You're not taking our lessons. So we want to know who polluted you with this Vaishnava conception. Because we want to kill them. For your protection, of course. So the issue is, who has polluted? Who has contaminated your consciousness? And he turns it around and says, you're the ones that have contaminated consciousness. I've heard about it. Where did you hear about it? You heard about it from Narada. Because Narada gave Bhagavat a katha, or a spiritual conception of life. So in the spiritual conception of life, this duality thing isn't there. So you heard about it, now he's seeing it. Wow. You're captured by Maya. You're captured by this friend-enemy consciousness. He's not insulting them again. He's not speaking flippantly. He's just speaking very plainly. This is illusory conception. Friend, enemy. Now what about us? Sometimes people may say and do things that go, on the physical or the mental plane. They irritate. They don't match our conception of what we think is proper or appropriate. So there's the diversity of living entities. There's the oneness that's strongly in the purport. There's diversity within that oneness. So how do we navigate the diversity? Especially when our sense of what's to be done and not to be done, or right and wrong, or any of those kinds of things, it doesn't match our conception. The Pandita Samadarshana message is, at least we want to get to see diversity in such a way the diversity is clear and the oneness is clear. Now, the very elevated stage, the Paramahansa stage, is everyone is serving Krishna except myself, because I'm disqualified. We're not at the Paramahansa stage. So at least to see the spirit soul within this body or that body or the other body form of life, or this mode of nature, that mode of nature, the other mode of nature, but spirit soul, meant for Krishna's service. And then how can I remain connected to Krishna in service to this other living entity, that other living entity, or group of living entities that are in this differentiated, covered condition, like me? How can I continue to cultivate my connection with Krishna in conjunction with these other living entities? So then you have freedom of choice always, but that freedom of choice becomes broader. And then we just can act. And Prahlad is making his choice. He's acting with the teachers in such a way. He's just speaking transcendental teachings. Again, that brings its consequences to him. So we'll have to make our choices, how we're going to speak and act when diversity is something we run into. And stay always fixed in the thought of Krishna, specifically the desire to be in service to Krishna, because that's who we are. And that's in one sense it's our challenge, in another sense it's our opportunity through the proper method of Bhagavad Dharma. We cultivate like that. It's 8 o'clock. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I wanted to share something. I got reminded of Srila Prabhupada when you mentioned about Pandita Samadarshinaha. So in one event in India, some of the Indians there were accusing Srila Prabhupada that he was not Pandita Samadarshinaha because he was finding faults with them, that they were not, they were presenting Bhagavad Gita, but there was not even a photo of Krishna and Arjuna. And Prabhupada said, yes, I may be Samadarshini, I may not be Samadarshi, but I'm always trying to see how to get everybody to serve Krishna. So that is my Samadarshina. So I wanted to share that and invite any thoughts from your end.
Prabhupada's very intelligent. He knew how to utilize the principle of being a servant, even when challenged. So very expert, and transcendentally realized. Nice example. Nice example. He said, I may be or may not be, but Samadarshana is how to help people come to Krishna's position of Krishna service. That's my Samadarshana. Very nice. Anything?
Pardon me, Guru Maharaj, I came a little late, so I couldn't quite catch it perhaps. If you would be so kind, you mentioned something about the golden seeds of the universe, and then later on, that was also mentioned as a spiritual seed. I didn't quite catch that.
I was describing the process of creation as found in Bhagavatam and Brahma Samhita.
Mm-hmm.
From the body of Mahavishnu come not yet formed universes in the form of golden seeds coming from the body of Mahavishnu.
Is that a spiritual seed, like a soul, or that's not it?
It's spiritual seed, like a soul.
Oh.
It's a spiritual seed.
Oh.
It's coming from the body of Mahavishnu. He doesn't have any direct contact with matter.
Uh-huh.
It's coming from his body. Matter's over there. From his body comes seeds.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Okay. Thank you.
It's like impregnation. From the father comes the seed. From Mahavishnu comes the seed of a universe.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I just wanted to share a little reflection from what I'm hearing, and I wanted to invite your thoughts. So my understanding is that in us, the defense mechanism out of eating, sleeping, mating, defending, the defense mechanism is so strong that it gets kicked in so very easily, and very quickly my discriminatory power kind of gets me into the realm of the world of polarities, where I'm kind of seeing, oh, this is good, bad, this is right, wrong, and all of that, and that's the space where I need to really kind of take a pause and reflect on my spiritual identity and the other person's, in a way for me to get out of the loop of between the discrimination and making a judgment and getting into the realm of polarities.
Very nicely expressed. I see what you're saying is your way. You're in your words saying what I say regularly. Somebody very kindly sent me a message taken from Viktor Frankl's book that says the same thing. And I don't have it verbatim at the moment, but it's something. He uses, psychology terms because that was his profession. Between stimulus and response, that's a psychology Skinnerian idea. Between stimulus and response, there's a moment where one can be reflective and choose the higher path or choose the right way. There's something like that. So free will is always there, and when we're caught in reacting, we're not using our free will. We're just being carried by stimulus response, by conditioning. So freedom is in that space in between the stimulus and making a response. Is who am I? What's my purpose? What's the best way to be in service to Krishna in this time? So it can happen quickly. But if we don't pause, it's not likely to happen. It's likely to happen that we get caught in the flow of the material energy, just like an animal or just like a lower creature. Human consciousness is that higher consciousness, making choices then that's directed by the willingness to be in service to Krishna, rather than caught up in the actions, reactions of the waves of the material energy. It's a choice. Conscious choice. Someone else?
Maharaj, I have 3 questions. So first is on the point of cooperation. Yesterday or day before yesterday, you mentioned that everybody has a different conception of what will please Krishna also. How Krishna will be pleased.
Well, there may be matching conceptions, but go ahead.
So, in such circumstances where their intentions are really good and they also want to please Krishna, but these are like different ways. So, how can we achieve cooperation in such situation?
With intelligence. That's the statement that comes in creation. Shirodakshai Vishnu enters within every atom, within the heart of the living entity, and within the demigods, the prototype demigods, so that the intelligence can then direct that intention. We'll say it negatively. Without that intelligence, we won't get cooperation.
So, if we feel or some inspiration comes to step back sometimes, that is also good.
Sure. But to get into the right or wrongness of something, whether it's an action or a pause or whatever, this is it's very individual and spontaneous, and the criterion of is it this or that, is it a force of Maya or the mind, or is it Krishna, etc., has everything to do with the consistency of intention to be in service to Krishna. Bodhi directs the soul to Krishna. The mind that's not driven by Bodhi doesn't direct the soul to Krishna. So the variable, the criterion, is the intention to serve Krishna being continuous.
So in such situation, when we decide to step back, sometimes it might happen that peace become more priority than pleasing Krishna. But I feel within myself that maybe this will please Krishna too.
Yeah.
Okay, Maharaj. Second question was I was trying to understand, Maharaj, this point of seeing.
Point of seeing?
Seeing the things as it is.
Okay.
And
Samadarshana, that one.
yeah, one that is one, and another is like Krupamaya Prabhu was expressing also how Prabhupada saw Lord Narasimhadev like on the drama stage.
Yeah.
So seeing Krishna everywhere. So the point was like one who is surrendered, he can see. So these.
But let's just go to that particular point. At one time, Prabhupada may respond this way, another time he may respond that way, another time a third way. It's not cookie cutter.
Yeah, but
it's spontaneous.
He was seeing Krishna all the time.
Well, what does that mean? When you say seeing Krishna all the time, my point in response to the example is be careful to not overemphasize that particular example, thus constraining spontaneous devotion on the part of a pure devotee, because in another circumstance he may respond very differently, and then another circumstance very differently. So that seeing Krishna always is not confined to a particular response.
Right. So, like seeing the things as they are and seeing Krishna everywhere, is there a relationship between these two?
Of course.
Like, can you kindly
Well,
elaborate?
yeah, it's seeing Krishna isn't bound by time or place. If one has that capacity to see, it's not confined by material yardsticks.
So, if we are seeing Krishna, then we can see the things as they are. Is that
Of course.
okay, Maharaj? And last is Maharaj, like
And allow for the fact that seeing things as they are can be very diverse.
yeah.
Yes.
This is a kind of way it could be a struggle in my life or somebody's life that we are trying to be seen first in some way, like some identity crisis, like we are not realized yet and we are trying to be seen. So while we are trying to be seen or finding ourselves, then how can we still be able to cultivate this concept of seeing Krishna also?
This is a complicated question. Just go.
It's a how to again.
Okay, but step back and keep it simple. If you get it complicated, you get lost. Just keep it simple. We're meant to serve Krishna. And you just stay with, my existence is to serve Krishna. And you stay with that. And the diversity and complexity out there becomes more clear. And if you're not, it's opposite. If you're not focused on my existence is to please Krishna, then it's just complexity and very bewildering. Mm-hmm. And what do I do in this circumstance, that circumstance? Oh, that didn't work. Now what? And
Yes.
it's forever convoluted. So the 241 Bhagavad Gita is Krishna gives the intelligence, Yena mamupayanti te, or 11:11 Bhagavad Gita. 10 Bhagavad Gita. Krishna gives the intelligence how to come to him.
Yes.
And the criterion for that isn't, how do you look at all the varieties of complexity? It's just internally, they're just very steady and fixed in devotion to Krishna. Bhajatam priti purvakam.
Yeah.
Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Just stay there. And the complexity and diversity can be sorted out or not. But there's one thing. I'm meant for serving Krishna. And then back to your earlier, because sometimes you need to pause. Like, I'm not really clear which direction, moving from the position of I'm meant for serving Krishna.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
We have something online? Huh?
We have one comment.
You want to read it?
Hare Krishna, the Sucharit Devi Dasi Mataji, and she says that between stimulus and response, our growth and our freedom.
Yeah. He's not speaking, your Krishna consciousness. He's speaking growth and freedom. How to deal with confining circumstances that are oppressive and you can't do anything about it. That's his message. Being in a Nazi concentration camp. Being in confined circumstance, you can't do anything about it. And that's our freedom and what's the other word?
Freedom and growth.
Growth. Okay. Srila Prabhupada.